Thank you for joining me for another amazing episode of Bioenergetics Beat. I'm Heather Gray, a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and bioenergetic practitioner, and this episode is brought to you today by Nikki, Unleash the Wellness Within. It's a non-invasive, easily affordable, and highly effective approach to wellness. It's a wearable device that puts frequency better based in your life on your hands and on your wrist. Make sure to stick around to the very, very end because as always, we have an incredible giveaway that you're not going to want to miss out on, but you're not going to want to miss out on one single thing this brilliant woman has to say. She's a dear friend of mine. She's an amazing colleague. And the stuff that she's doing in the world is just well, I'll let her tell you because you guys will figure it out. So let's welcome Dr. Diane Mueller to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's so great as always to spend more time with you, Heather. I'm so happy to be here.
And me too. I was just thinking about that today. I'm like, I think between you and me, you've been on now two of my show twice, this show once. I've been on your show once and then on a summit once. Like, I think you've been a more regular guest on my shows than anybody else has. And
Oh,
it's
I
just no
feel so
wonder.
honored.
You're brilliant. But tell us a little bit about Dr. Diane Mueller and why did you get going into Lyme disease? Most folks I know in the Lyme world usually don't get there without a story of their own. So I'd love to hear about
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah, it's so crazy, how we all wind up on this path of working with this very complicated condition. And I do think, like you said, like most of us really have to go through our own path and our journey and our healing with this to be able to have the level, I think, of compassion and empathy and understanding for people. Because most people, like myself, were gaslit for so long and went from so many doctors to so many doctors. And just really, there's so much advocation, personal advocation we have to do in this world. And just like most of my clients, I had that similar story. So at one point when my symptoms were really bad, like the worst couple of days of it were when I would get stuck in certain positions. So for example, I had pain so bad that it would feel like my legs were being sawed off is the way I would describe it, which was bad enough until you get stuck on a place like a toilet and you can't get off, right? So, led to a level like of not only the pain and the intensity, but then like embarrassment of like I can't literally move my body off this toilet because the pain was so gripping and once I would be in certain positions sometimes I would get stuck there. So those were really intense days. And then other times there were symptoms like forgetting where I lived. I was really one of the things that I did that I think was super important to my care was I went for basically walk around the block. It could be 3 to 5 minutes every day, pretty much every day, not quite every day, but almost every day, just because I knew the importance for the lymph. So even if I was in crazy pain and fatigue and all that, it's like I got to do this self-care thing. So sometimes I would go for these walks just around the block, these like 5 minute walks, and I would forget where I lived. Like insanity, right? I was in my 20s and I was forgetting these very, very basic things. And it was just these episodes that would come, like this cloud would come. And then the symptom that we know in the Lyme community is depersonalization, where I felt like really detached from my body, like this out of body experience would happen. And it'd almost be like I'd be looking down my body, kind of separate from my body, and didn't have the memory in those moments to know where my home was. And luckily, those episodes were very very brief. They were, they could have been 5 seconds, they could have been 30 seconds. I know it felt so freaking scary that it felt like a lot longer, but I really don't think in hindsight that it probably was. But those were some examples of, what was going on. And then, eventually discovered Lyme disease, Bartonella, Babesia, mold illness, and a lot of other, big types of infections and toxins in my body. And so began my recovery.
So were you a practitioner? Were you a doctor already, or was this before you had become a doctor?
It was actually when I was in school. So I was in school. I made it through school well through pure will, through literal pure will. And that was a blessing and a curse. It was a blessing from the standpoint of I was surrounded with a lot of other medical professionals who, were running tests and running a lot of the basics and had really good resources there for care. However, one of the things that happened is I had just had was so frequently given a label that it was basically medical school syndrome. Like everybody in medical school had
Mm.
strange, rare, and peculiar things. And medical school is a really great place for breeding hypochondria because you read about every diagnosis.
I never even
Like,
thought about that.
right? It's like every diagnosis, it's like, well, I'm exhausted. I'm falling asleep on my books. I'm like, all these other things are happening. So it's so easy. And, and it like, no disrespect for my teachers and for the people that were diagnosing me because everybody was having weird symptoms back then. And it really, so naturally I had this hat on that it was just medical school syndrome. And it wasn't really until I graduated and then I started talking to some of my friends and colleagues, and this was, 3, 6 months after, and they're like, yeah, we're feeling great. We have our energies coming back. Like, and, they just like talk about all the ways they were feeling good. And I was feeling worse than ever. And that's when I decided to, do some more investigative work and do other types of tests because that's really when it clicked on in my brain around like, oh, this isn't just medical school fatigue. My friends are recovering and I'm actually getting worse.
Oh my gosh. What prompted you to go to medical school to begin with?
Digestive issues. So, it
Oh,
was
gotcha.
basically long-term chronic digestive issues. So, there's a lot of, what ended up being a lot of small intestinal bacteria overgrowth recurrence, parasites. I had a parasite called Entamoeba histolytica, which is a pretty nasty parasite, can get in the body and cause liver abscesses and all sorts of gross things. So that's really where I ended up in holistic and naturopathic medical school is because I had gone conventional routes and largely was just told, hey, it's like kind of normal to only poop once every couple weeks and just take laxatives
Oh.
and yeah. And so I started reading in my late teen years. I started being interested in nutrition and just started reading more books and really learning through checking books out of the library, back in those days of like, oh, we're not really like, we're actually like, our bodies are made to have normal bowel movements. Like, this is actually can be a sign of disease process. So through that and then through continuing to explore that really is how I ended up in naturopathic medical school.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I don't think I actually heard that story before. I was like, I've heard a lot of this other stuff, but I'm like, what got you started to begin with? So this has been going on. So how long had you had those stomach issues?
And really at my whole life. Like, I remember, being a young child and taking laxatives and those kind of things. I remember being young and not knowing like what size, like if I was going to go on a trip and like be comfortable in my pants or having to pack like extra sizes and elastic because, my stomach would just bloat so badly and I was so uncomfortable. So I don't know exactly what age it was, but I know it was like a very young age because I do have these memories of being young and having these kind of thoughts on, especially on vacation, just like trying to navigate some of those things.
Holy cow. Yeah, I had blastocystis hominis and causes a lot of the similar bloating. And I joke that after I would eat, I would feel like, Violet off of Willy Wonka. And I was waiting for the Oompa Loompas to jump out, and roll me, roll me
Yeah.
away. Like it's no joke. It's painful. It's horrible.
It is, and blastocystis, I think, is a really important one to talk about just because I see that too. I see that like similar symptoms in patients where they have blastocystis hominis and they have all these symptoms, but yet it's not tested for on standard, stool cultures. And oftentimes when you do a regular, like I do a true functional stool culture where you do find it, depending upon the practitioner, like I've had people come into me that have had positive blastocystis like on their test, and they're like, oh, my practitioner told me not to worry about that. So there's this like huge misunderstanding of like, oh, well, it's not, this isn't Giardia, right? So it's like there's this huge misunderstanding, I think, in the medical community around like,
Oh
well, if it's
my
not
God.
Giardia, if it's not cryptospirosis or
C.
yeah,
diff.
right, exactly. It's not like some of these major types of pathogens that it's not a problem. And it's like, well, there's actually a lot of symptoms that can come from these less commonly talked about parasites like blasto.
Yeah, my life changed when I started treating for the blasto. Like it was crazy. I was like, oh, wait, I can eat. And I didn't just gain 20 pounds
Right.
from five
I can
pounds of food. Yeah, it's crazy.
I can eat them. I'm comfortable afterwards and satisfied, and my belly is like responding like a healthy person.
So then what were some of the routes that you took then when so who finally got you diagnosed? And then what did you do with that after that?
I diagnosed myself actually, and then
Of
what
course
I
you did.
yeah. And then what I wound up doing is studying a lot. So I was like I had a couple, without naming names because they're very well known names in the profession. I had a couple Lyme literate docs tell me you should never, 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 ever, ever treat yourself for Lyme disease. And I really didn't agree with that, especially because one of the things, and I respect where it was coming from. It was coming from a place of, we don't always see things clearly when we're in, it's like,
Mm.
being in the, the forest and the trees example, right? You're in the trees, you can't always see the forest because you're so surrounded by it. So it's a very, very good point and absolutely worth considering. And I understand why these other docs were saying that to me. But my biggest problem I was having was that some of the, like, the biggest things that most people are doing is triple antibiotic therapy for, the treatment of Lyme. And I really didn't want to do that. I really, it's like, not saying there's not places for antibiotics, because absolutely I'm definitely, very keep all the tools in the toolbox kind of gal. And it's not where I want it to start, because there are so many different, as I know, there's so many different like herbs and treatment strategies that we can use to support Lyme and to heal from Lyme and to put Lyme into remission. And I didn't want to destroy the microbiome. And since then, one of the things that I feel like I've seen most commonly is people that have the highest level of recurrence, or people that have gone, for so many, have so many doctors and have crazy MCAS and they're reacting to everything. So much of the time I see these people as people that have done triple antibiotic therapy, or like had pick lines in where they're doing IV round after IV round after IV round of antibiotics. And so, yeah, I mean, in answer to your question, I did wind up doing my own thing, still studying a lot of stuff. Like, I became obsessed with Dr. Dietrich Klinghardt and just started studying everything he put out and buying all of his courses and going through every material thing of his that I could find, and then reading articles and studying with other, practitioners. I flew around the country and studied with a few different people, just for like days here and there to just get a glimpse of what other people were doing, other missing types of things. So I kind of put my own protocol together based upon that, which sounds crazy when you had Lyme disease, but I was already so well trained from having it in school and, and sucking it up with that. And I do think I have a little bit more of a stronger constitution than some people. So I think that also allowed me to study, while I was still feeling the way I was, even though I know that's like, can be a very, very challenging and sometimes impossible thing for other people.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I was the same way, when I look back when I was diagnosed and, I was a business owner, I was a hairstylist, had a salon in my home. I had a 9-year-old and I was going through FDN school at the same time, like barely doing it. I still don't know how, but there are some of us. And were you an athlete by any chance?
I'm still an athlete.
Okay. So I
Yeah.
am finding that there's a connection to some folks who, performance arts, athletes, people learning resilience, right? And learning how to push through things really gives us an advantage. Because then I look at people like my kid, God bless him. He doesn't have an athletic bone in his body. And the minute things get hard, he just, whew, he just folds, to where those of us that have been in that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Competitive, right?
Yeah.
That competitive, it does give you a bit of an edge. And I definitely think it gives us an edge when it comes to this type of stuff as well. But there's even more of like a whole victim mindset, like we'll talk about later, that you kind of got into your book that you said got you into a little bit of trouble, which I think is awesome. It's another reason why I love you, is because you're just such a badass disruptor, right? Like
Oh,
you put
thank
it
you.
out there because people aren't going to get better, right? With this stuff just staying, oh, okay, we got to keep the status quo. No, that's not how people get better. So,
It's true. It's true.
um,
I really just to comment real fast. I really appreciate what you're saying about athletics, because I've also had that thought in my mind. Because even when I used to run, competitively, and like I still run now, I didn't when I had Lyme, but I do now again. And back then when I was competing, as well as now where I'm just doing it for more mind training in many ways than body, like I repeat, and I've been doing this for many, many, many years of, I repeat things in my head like, my mind is stronger than my body. My mind tells my body what to do. My body does not tell my mind what to do. And obviously we have to like be careful about that, because we want to make sure we're listening to our body. But the whole thing was like long term, from early age of competing around, I am not tired. I can do this. I can do hard things. And I've been training my mind for that for so many years. So I just really, I've never talked to anybody that actually brings up that athletic component as a part of the why, even though I've been curious about that for years. So I really appreciate you bringing, that concept up.
Yeah, it's just because I see people who are just decimated, and I'm like, "How on earth did I do all the things that I did?" I also found out and actually, I can't, but so I wasn't in, athletics per se, but I showed horses, and so it was a very competitive, very, expensive hobby growing up. And the person who put in the most time, the most effort, usually got the biggest rewards a lot of times, not always. Sadly, when you're in a judged competition, there's other things at play. We'll get into that some other time. But it just really did have to push you through those days that you're just too tired and you don't wanna go, mom, but, that's where winners are made, right? That's how
It's true.
diamonds are formed, right? Under pressure, like, so, yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. I think it's sad that our PE system, it used to be such a different animal than it is today, and then now we've got people with no constitution, right? Not being able to have the mental fortitude to push through things, and I really do think there's a big piece to that, so awesome.
I agree. I agree. We could have a whole soapbox on that conversation.
All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna dive deeper into her book. Woohoo! And then she's got an ebook coming out just in time for Lyme Disease Awareness Month. So super excited to dive into that. Don't go anywhere. Again, we've got an awesome giveaway at the end, but then again, you're not gonna want to leave. But stay tuned. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, my name's Stephen Davis, founder and developer of Nikki, a personal frequency delivery system. This wearable is designed to deliver frequencies into the body to speed recovery from Lyme disease. Our Lyme suite of frequencies are the newest version of our Lyme recovery program. Thousands of Lyme sufferers, which include my family, use the Lyme daily to overcome Lyme disease. Today, I'm proud to announce a new suite of Lyme frequency sets that are going to be focused on co-infections. Nikki is loaded with Lyme Daily, which deals with the Lyme disease, plus 9 additional frequency sets designed to address your worst co-infection symptoms. Those frequency sets include bacteria and virus, detox, emotional balance, gut health, histamine, mold and fungal, Lyme sleep, pain and stress. And we know that those are going to be well received from people with Lyme disease. We are passionate about speeding your recovery from Lyme disease. It's a terrible disease that no one should have to live with. Once you have used your Lyme Daily, then choose from the 9 frequency sets designed to offer relief from your most persistent symptoms. The key is to stick with it. Don't frequency hop until you've used the Lyme Daily. Best practice is use the other frequency sets for a minimum of 2 hours before switching to another. This is giving the frequency sets time to bring your body into balance. Good balance means good health.
Awesome. Welcome back. So let's dive a little deeper you know, into your book. It's not in your mind. It's not in your mind. Why, what prompted you to write this? Just take us through your book.
Yeah, I think, what prompted me to write this in many ways, I don't even remember. I mean, it's probably just wanting to put down my process onto paper and to have an easier way of people accessing things. Like one of the things that you'll find in my book is it is a level of like a survivor's guide. Like that's what I was originally calling it because I do have things in there, for example, of like how to interview a doctor to see if they're like a good fit for you, right? Because it's some of these things that we're not actually really taught on how to determine. And, if you ask questions, what answers you should really be looking for to help you understand, is this person going to be a good fit for you and how to go about that. So, some of those things I think were part of the inspiration. Other things, like you mentioned, around, the victim nature is a really important and cautious conversation. And I did feel like that conversation needed to get out there because it's complicated. It's a complicated thing because when we are dealing with Lyme, when an insect bites us and delivers us a, horrible infection, which is, Lyme disease, when we move into a moldy place and we don't know it and the inspector missed it, and we're all of a sudden like dealing with crazy symptoms that are like indescribable, we are victims. Like we are victims of that insect. We are victims of somebody not catching us. But so it's very, very easy, therefore, I think, to get stuck in this mentality of like suffering and victim, because there's an element of that where that's true and that's real. And our emotional body, who's gone through trauma, needs to feel validated. And so, but I think the problem, and one of the things I address in the book with that is why I feel like it's so important is because even though all that's true, and even though as like Lyme survivors, it's so easy to feel like that level of compassion for people because we've been there, and all of that is true. And the need for validation and the need for support and the need for understanding, yes, 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 yes. And when we get stuck in like that victim mentality of like, oh my gosh, it's never going to be over, woe is me, life sucks, all these types of things, what happens is we're secreting adrenaline. And when we're secreting adrenaline, we see that that improves the ability of the Lyme microorganisms to communicate. It improves their biofilms. When their biofilms get stronger, our immune system has a harder time fighting them. Adrenaline does that. Adrenaline doesn't do anything positive for our repair systems of our body. It doesn't do anything positive for sending those signals, of like repair on a cellular level. It actually does the opposite. So, the problem I was seeing for people is like, while that, that victim like type of story is real and it's valid and it's normal and it's natural. And of course, when we get stuck in that story, we're actually secreting things like adrenaline that are actually preventing us from getting well. So it's like, where is that balance, right, of helping people feel validated and heard and compassion and empathy and all those things that I think people innately deserve in these scenarios, but yet at the same time, helping them not get stuck in that, because as much as all of those feelings are valid when we get stuck in them, we're actually preventing the thing that we all want, which is for everybody to heal. So that was another, I think, point in looking back as far as, well, why this book? It was in part, I address so many things from a physical, mental, emotional standpoint. So there's, anything from herbs, the lab testing, and, those sorts of things. So it's not just about these concepts, but those concepts are in there as a way of saying, hey, this is why, one of the reasons why I see people not heal. And this is how we can start breaking out of that vicious cycle of, needing validation, but also not wanting that validation to get us in that adrenaline vicious cycle.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was undiagnosed for 27 years, and you talked about being gaslighted by the medical community. The struggle is real, and it took it took a while. So then once I got that diagnosis, it was like my golden ticket, right? I was like, I got a golden ticket,
Yes.
you know, validate me. But then there wasn't a whole lot of validation. So then I would kind of find myself getting smaller and shrinking and, getting more sick to try to get this validation. And then I was wearing it like a cloak of honor. Right. And it wasn't until I decided that enough, and throw that cloak off, take my identity away from Lyme disease, was when I started to really get better. And then, I was noticing it a lot back then. I think the Lyme groups have gotten a little bit better now, but this was back in 2013, and still not a whole lot of, education out about it. And there was still just this toxic, weird, kind of like one-upping each other. And it was just like, I walked out of there feeling dirty. I'm like, I feel like I need to take a shower. Like, I'm not going to get better in that environment. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think that's like where we get stuck, right? Is because we get stuck in sometimes these communities where it's just these like sad horror stories. And it's it's another like complicated thing, because what we're dealing with so many times with these chronic situations is like social isolation and a level of like wanting that community, wanting support. But then sometimes we get into these communities and it's so negative, and the support is like all about these, like I said, these horror stories that we can get stuck in, while we're getting a level of, say, social connection, which as humans we innately need, is a type of human of social connection that actually can be, continuing to keep us stuck in our recovery process. And that's what's so interesting about doing this for, close to 15 years now, is like the pattern recognition that, starts to happen, as I know we both have, after, seeing so much of this for so long, around like, oh, the way people are thinking and how they're relating, unfortunately, is so much of the time oftentimes connected to healing. And I see like the people I work with that come in and they're like, I'm going to find a way, and this has been going on for 30 years and I'm still going to find a way. those are the people that do find a way.
Amen. Absolutely. 110%. And that's why we clicked so well too, is because you're not just looking at the treatment. You're focused on a lot of the mindset and the lifestyle and everything else that goes into getting better. And that's part of the reason why I fell in love with the Nikki as well, is because it takes a bioenergetic approach around Lyme. So I know you've had a few patients using the Nikki. What have you noticed some of the results?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things I'd say about people that are wearing the Nikki watch is I'm so cautious, as people when they read my book will see, that I'm so cautious about anything that I bring on a new thing. So any sort of energetic machine or any sort of like, supportive device, even down to saunaing, right? I'm so careful about everything because what I've seen is people can herx from anything, right? So people can have like reactions to anything. But one of the first things I'll say is while I still think with any new, types of scenario, people should go slow. I have not seen any herxing with the Nikki on my patients. And
Do you
like,
know
so
why?
tell me why.
Because it does go slow. Because like the
Okay.
first day
So
you
it's
only
built
get
in.
you only get a minute of like Lyme disease support. Like
Ah,
day
that makes
two, you get
sense.
2 minutes. And so it's a slow buildup. You're actually not at full strength until 30 days in.
That's huge. And I think that's really intelligent of the product and the design is because it is built in for that. So that makes perfect sense as to why I've been noticing that. Because that's been like a little bit shocking to me around like, well, like, I've seen people, herks from like 3 minutes of sauna or like,
Right.
5 minutes of HBOT, which if you tell an HBOT therapist you only want 5 minutes, it's a very hard thing to convince them of. But I've seen people react to those levels. So that's super intelligent about it. And then, as far as like symptom release, I'm still like fairly new in observing my patients, but the few things that I've seen for sure is improvement in fatigue, for improvement in brain and cognitive function, numbness and tingling, and those kind of neurological symptoms seen improve, and EMF sensitivity is another big one that I'm seeing. So, still like a little bit early on, but I'm pretty excited about like, okay, so, some level of these symptom reliefs that are pretty fairly quickly in wearing this. I'm noticing this as well as, like I said, like, holy cow, like people are not herxing. And, I say that cautiously, like still, still be always cautious with like new things you try. But the fact that Nikki built it in, like you're saying, is just huge.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm the same way, this is probably my 10th different type of bioenergetic over the past 10 years, and I've had everything from a $25,000 machine. I laugh when I met the original owner that I completely dismissed this because of the price. It was, at the time 1,500, now it's, 997. But I'm used to working with $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 things, and here's this wearable device that's, under $1,000. And I was like, there's no way it works. But alas, it does. So that's great that you're starting to see that with your patients as well. So tell us a little bit more about your book. What are some of your favorite chapters and kind of what makes yours stand out more than like other Lyme books on the market right now?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the one of the biggest things I do in there is walk people through whole body approach. So one of the things that I see as far as why people are not getting well oftentimes is it's so common, right? Doctor to doctor to doctor, it's like, okay, this antibiotic, that herb, then it's, traveling to Europe for hyperthermia or like SOT treatment or all these different types of things, right? So it's like, whatever is the new, like, oh, can you offer in your clinic this new Lyme treatment that's on the market, even though I've tried 15 to 20 to 30 other Lyme treatments? And that's one of the problems I see. And one of the reasons that that is happening is because I think like the golden ticket example you gave around like we finally have a diagnosis. We finally say, "Oh my gosh, my symptoms are Lyme." And we're so used to in medicine, we're so used to this acute kind of thing of like I have a sore throat, so it's a strep infection. I have a headache, take some Advil because I'm dehydrated and I need to drink some more water. So we're so used to like, hey, we have a symptom, there's one cause, we treat that one cause, it goes away. And so I think so many people are so used to this that unfortunately, when it comes to chronic disease, we think, oh, golden ticket, Lyme diagnosis, I have my answer. And when things are not working for treatment, we get so connected to, but I know it's Lyme because I have this diagnosis. So this is the reason. So I'm not responding versus, hey, it's one piece of a pie. And oftentimes non responsiveness is due to, of course, then I'm going to say this cautiously because we do want to find the right treatment. But oftentimes non-responsiveness, especially in these examples that I'm saying, where you've seen somebody's seen so many doctors, really is related to not finding all the root causes. And that's one of the things we really explore in this book is like, from the basics, how do we actually begin to build your body up so you have the energy to even put towards healing? Because so many people are depleted. We can't detox without B vitamins, right? We can't kill and create some of these processes of attacking Lyme without a lot of, certain nutrients in our body. So, what are we going to do in order to actually build the body up, make it stronger so it has that foundation so it can even go after things like Lyme and other, co-infections as well as any toxins. So we talk about that. We talk about missing labs. We talk about how to find that. And then we also talk about step-by-step protocols. So there's a few things in there I particularly love, like page 256, for example, has a chart and it tells like, oh, what binders, for example, work with different types of toxins. So if you have different toxins that are very common to have in addition to Lyme, and you want to bind them and hold them, yep, that's the one, to get them out of your body, what binders would you use? So, the idea of this book is to really make it very practical, very accessible. You'll see in the book, there's certain things when I talk about lab tests where I say, like, hey, check out my webpage because I like this. I don't want this book to go obsolete. So when it comes to things like updated lab tests, rather than putting the specific lab test in the book, I say, hey, go to my website that I continually update. So as like new content comes out in the world, then the book is just driving you to the place to make sure that I'm helping people that have bought the book continue to stay updated with the latest in the field on tech, on research and that sort of thing. So
That's
it's super
awesome.
fun.
And
Yeah.
part of the reason we're having this is because you're having a launch with your ebook. The audio version is coming out, which I'm super excited about. To be honest with you, I'm your friend. You know how much I love you. I have not read it because I do not sit down to read. If
Yeah.
I sit down, it's literally for the last hour of the day and it's to watch something and to shut down. But there are times, when I'm out for a walk or if I'm, doing stuff. And so an audiobook I'll listen to because I have a little bit more if I'm driving, right? But I can't read when I'm driving. I can't read when I'm taking a walk. So audiobooks fill that space right now. And so I'm super excited because yeah, yours, the minute this comes out, yours will be the first audiobook I read because
Oh,
that's
amazing.
I feel like a bad friend because I haven't been able to read it. But like I said, if I'm to be honest, I work so hard and I literally get 1 hour of relaxation a day and I need to turn my brain off. So
Yeah, I get it. I
and
get
this
it.
is too meaty.
Actually
This
similar.
is not turn your brain off.
Right. Yes, it's a very, very dense book. I think it's close to 90,000 words. So it's there's a lot of material in there, a lot of research in there, a lot of love in there. So it definitely will be filled with information. And yeah, I've known this for a long time that I needed to do the Audible version. It just was not able to get to the project at the initial book launch. So I'm also excited about it because like you, even though I only have had the book up until what's about to come out, the Audible, like you, I basically only listen to books as well. So I see, I hear, I'm aware of the strong need. So I totally get it.
Thank God. Because I'm a podcast host too, people send me their books and now I have this bookshelf of like 30 amazing life-changing books that are all screaming at me, read me, read me. And I'm like, and then I was like, oh, but I can listen. And so I started. So
Yes.
yeah, it's been a blessing and I've been loving it. So thank you. I know,
It's
and I need to
good.
get this signed. Like I was just looking at it. It's not signed. So next time I see you,
Yeah, we got to fix that.
I know, right? Like, how is this not signed?
Yeah.
So what other little last nugget do you want to leave people with before we sign off today?
The last nugget really is just make sure that you have, whether it's, coming and working with myself, whether it is just building out your team, just make sure you have somebody or a team of people that are really working on the whole picture. So if you have a line doc that you really love, but they're not doing mold, they're not doing thyroid, they're not looking at these other things, it doesn't have to be one person. Like you can come to my practice and we can do most of everything in, at my practice, but it's also, if you like your team, just add more people to your team so you make sure you're really rounding it out, because the whole point is it's really about having somebody or having a team of people that can evaluate for all of those root causes and not get stuck on just looking for one. So Lyme is really, and having these crazy symptoms really is so many more times more than just Lyme, Bartonella, Babesia, Ehrlichia, et cetera, right? It really is oftentimes a combination of all these things. So just making sure that you really have this care team together, and making sure you have somebody on your team to work with the neurological reprogramming, to use things like the Nikki Watch and other supportive devices, because that neurological reprogramming, this is a trauma. There's no way around the fact that Lyme disease is a very, very big trauma. And for many of us, hopefully the biggest trauma that we'll ever go through in our lives. And so having a plan of getting your neurological system out of that trauma really is essential as well.
Amen. Absolutely. 110%. Hey, shameless plug time. So where can people find you? Where can people find the book? Where can people find the updated stuff?
Yeah, thank you. So when we are launching this podcast, this should be right in our promotional time period. So definitely connect with me on my site at mylymedoc.com. Definitely check out my video ebook, which is a video version of just me basically going through and talking in ways like this, talking through my protocols in a kind of video format. So you can get that for free off my website. We can put the link in the show note for you guys as well on that. And then you can find my book on Amazon. The Audible will be on Amazon. So we are launching this internationally. So just go on to your, whatever your national Amazon link is. It's Not in Your Mind is the name. And of course, you can always connect with me just on my main website, which is mylymedoc.com.
Fantastic. Thank you. And make sure that you also go to wearenikki.com/podcast and enter in BioBeats for 10% off. But we really love our customers, and as a way for us to show our appreciations, we want to give away a Nikki, not a Nikki plus Lyme, but just a base model Nikki, which deals with pain, anxiety, energy, EMF protection, like so many. I use mine daily, but we give one of those away on each and every episode. Make sure to go to the show notes to learn how to enter. Good luck. A big thank you to April's winners. I know we're a little behind on getting these names out to you, but here they are. We have a Miss Angela. We've got a Teddy. A big thank you to Katie and to Jude. Those are our April winners. Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to have a healthy day.
Nikki plus Lyme is the next generation of Wave 1 technology referred to in this testimonial.
The Wave device, have you been able to get back to yoga?
I have, yes. Not even just teaching, but like my own practice. That was I remember so clearly. I went to a class last year and I wasn't even able to do like a basic pose because my body was in so much pain. And that's not something I've ever experienced before. I'm sorry, I'm getting like really emotional thinking about this. But it is really hard to have things that like you almost take for granted in your daily life, and then suddenly to just completely lose the ability to have those things anymore. So it almost in a way is like there are silver linings to everything, and that is a silver lining, is just like being grateful for so many of the basic things that we often don't even give a second thought to. So short answer, yes.
Nikki puts a personal wellness center in your hands and on your wrist. Be better, do better. wearenikki.com. There's a new word for wellness, Nikki. Nikki, the bioenergetic wearable designed to help you feel better and perform better. Other wearables just track how you're doing. Nikki is about helping you do better. Touch the Nikki screen to choose the frequency you want for what you want to do and how you want to feel. Nikki puts a personal wellness center in your hands and on your wrist. Be better, do better. wearenikki.com. The views, information, and opinions expressed in this content are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Freemedica. Freemedica Technologies, Inc. and its employees are not responsible, nor verifies accuracy any of the information contained in the following content. The primary purpose of this content is to educate and inform. This content does not constitute medical or other professional advice or services.